some things to discuss throughout the regular season. A couple of these teams that we discussed, we mentioned Jewel Sumner, mentioned Lakeshore, Franklinton, a lot of these teams from the North Shore that are used to be in single-digit seeds, they'll get their playoff journey started this week. So we're going to bring on from the North Shore Prep Report, Mike Cullen, and we'll also bring in Cass Hargis, who's with the North Shore Prep Report, and also the Talkin' Ball Y'all show that takes place on Sunday nights and Tuesday nights. So Cass and Mike, really glad to have y'all on this morning. Let's start, if we can, again with 6-5A. St. Paul's getting a win over Covington last night. They've kind of quietly worked on and kind of climbed to the top of the mountain of the North Shore as far as the 5A schools go. But both of those teams will get set to get started in the playoffs here.
Yeah, Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll tip it off. Really exciting night in 6-5A. Obviously, the big game of the night was Covington playing at St. Paul's. Big rivalry game, playing for the Little Brown Jug. Really impressive win for St. Paul's. Not just getting the win, but the way they won. They ran the ball extremely well. I think Cody Corrales had 11 carries, over 100 yards again. Brady Pearson, their quarterback, very efficient. Something like 4 of 6 or 5 of 7. Threw for a touchdown. And then Adam Connell, who we featured a little bit last week, kind of a fullback H-back for them, had a really good game on the ground as well. But impressive overall. Covington loses there, which, we've been high on Covington all season, but it looks like they do sneak into the playoffs here. So that's big for Coach Salter and that group. They're going to be a tough out for anybody because, it's been the up and down of Covington all season, right, Cass? I mean, you don't know what Covington team's going to show up, but they're extremely talented on both sides of the ball.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's for sure. And, just to go back to St. Paul's, and they're in that Division I select bracket, which every time you look at it seems to just get deeper and deeper. But as it stands right now, they'll host Pineville as the 9 seed and then travel to Evangel. This is a team in St. Paul's that as a team, they rushed for over 300 yards last night. Like you said, Mike Corrales went for over 100. I think that every game this year he's rushed for at least 100 yards. And they just win. They win that district. They schedule tough. Like they're very interesting heading into the playoffs. And in Covington, you don't want to see those guys in the first round. They've been up and down as they start to figure out things on offense. That defense is so talented that they can keep them into any game. The two on this graphic here that I am most intrigued in seeing is Hammond and Mandeville. Hammond, Coach Buckles and that crew, they've done a great job. They get a big win over rival Ponchatoula last night. They're going to host a first-round playoff game. But Mandeville, with Crew Calora at quarterback, he's a freshman. He's gotten better each week. This is a staff at Mandeville with Coach Jones that they just win everywhere they go, and they know what it takes to win at this time of the year. Mandeville, they're going to have to travel first round of the playoffs, but that's a team that with the right breaks and the right side of the bracket can definitely make a run. They've gotten better each week out.
And Hammond in there is the 13 seed in Select Division I, and Cass, you're familiar with that area for sure. That'll be a really great challenge for the Tours. That great for them to have that regular season that got them this seed.
No, absolutely. And, looking at, and I heard you shouting out Louisiana Sports Line. I might have gone to that website a million times this fall. Those guys do such a good job. But just looking at where it is now, and what's interesting in that Division I select bracket is it's obviously the big district there down here. It's the Catholic League, but a lot of those teams are kind of going to be jumbled up and play each other. So Hammond may be able to avoid one of the top Catholic League teams, and they may find themselves in a round 3 playoff game. So it'll be interesting. And that Mike, they got our favorite player, Donut. Back there, returning. Yeah, Donut. He is an electrifying player with the ball in his hands. That's a scary team.
Yeah, Reginald Monroe. He's really talented. I'll tell you what's really impressive, and I have to give credit to Coach Buckles and that crew. It's really exciting for them to have the season they've had, and won some big district games, get to host a playoff game. But what's interesting is 2 weeks ago, Hammond played at Covington, and it didn't go well, and they lost that game. But they're in the game the whole time, and they they throw 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter. Well, since then, Taron Jones has kind of been on a tear, their quarterback. He's a junior, but he's in his third year starting. He's really impressive, and he's got some weapons around him. They can run the ball really well with Zaylen Bennett. So I look forward to Hammond kind of making a run. They play defense really well. Obviously, Dorsett Buckles is a defensive guy, but that's an exciting one. And to add, I think what Coach Jones and Mandeville and that crew have done now is they figured out what Crew Kalor can do really well. And they based it around him, and they've got some weapons that people don't know about. Luke DeMello's done really a job at wide receiver. Jake Giacchetti, kind of a slot kid that's really fast. And Mandeville, they haven't played great on defense this year, but you always know that they're going to be sound on defense. So I like the matchup no matter what happens. I think they can make noise in the playoffs.
So, Mike, you think Mandeville is one of those? We see it every single year. It may be Division I, it may be Division III. You see one of those 6-4 teams that everybody kind of elbowing each other, saying, "Watch out for Team X." Is Mandeville that one of those 6-4 teams this year?
Well, look, I always say this: coaching in high school wins ball games, and Cass touched on this, and it's true. Coach Jones and that staff, they've won everywhere they've gone, right? They understand what the playoffs look like. They prepare for the playoffs all season. It's not just a matter of getting ready for the playoffs in the playoffs. They know what it's like to be there. They know what it's like to make a run. It's hard for me to say, hey, this team with a freshman quarterback's really going to make a run in 5A non-select. However, he's not a freshman. I mean, the kid, he's basically a sophomore now, but he's played like a junior all season. So, it's time for me to stop calling him a freshman. It's probably on me more than anything else.
Yeah, I would be totally fine with watching Crew Kalora take the Skippers on a run. That would be exciting to see. Let's take a peek at District 7 5A. We saw that Salmon, Slidell, and got some wins there last night. Of course, Mandeville going out of district and getting a win there. But another 5A district where, again, just tough battles all year long. No one's going to come out there undefeated, but that's not to be unexpected.
Yeah, this was awesome last night. I'll let Cass touch on this, man. But you had 4 2-1 teams going into the last night, and two games where they each played each other. Chalmette and Salmon, it's kind of turned into this rivalry game. And Slidell and North Shore is a long-standing rivalry game. I'll touch on the first game first. Chalmette and Salmon. You talked about Mandeville kind of making a run, a team. I look at Salmon in a very similar fashion. If not, I might give them an edge on going to make a little run. The reason why, their quarterback, Dejon Howard, he's going to be one of the best around. He's a junior. He's really turned it on. He scrambled for a 35-yard touchdown last night, 35 yard, with about 30 seconds left in the game to win that ball game. But they can throw it. They've got weapons on the outside. Once again, they have a great running back, Jimmy Chansey, who's a bigger kid. He's 205 pounds. He runs downhill and he can run away. It's all about, to me, and Cass, you can elaborate on this, but for the North Shore, it's who can make a stop, right? I mean, the teams that have made stops when they need to, nobody's actually played dominant defense. Like Chalmette all year was that team, and then as of late, they've given up a lot of yards. But then it's what team can make a stop. And before you say that, touch on that, Cass, one thing I have to say is travesty for a team like Chalmette not to be in the playoffs. Like that's a hard one because they're very talented. They had a great season. And look, power rankings is power rankings. You didn't play well enough. That is what it is. I just hate it for some of those kids because they are really talented and they could have made a run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the game of the night too. Chalmette traveling to Salmon for what was on the line. Not just in district, but going into it, we talked, the losing team may not make the playoffs, and that looks like that's what's going to happen. But, man, Chalmette had a 10-point lead with 4 minutes left in the game. And like you said, Mike, Dejon Howard leads a touchdown drive to score with a little bit more than a minute left. They recover an onside kick, and then he scores again to win the game. Like, that's heartbreaking. And on the Chalmette side, that defense, like you said, we've talked as it's one of the best defenses in the area. And just, for whatever reason, the last 2 weeks against Slidell and Salmon, they've given up. Slidell, it was more giving up a lot of points. And the Salmon, it was just giving up points at the wrong time. But, for them not to make the playoffs, that's tough. And we can get into the playoff talk later. But I almost think that's almost like a good thing in the sense that I think the playoff brackets are about as balanced and competitive as we can get them. So while you hate to see someone like Chalmette not make the playoffs, like there's some validity in running through that bracket. But Salmon, Dejan Howard, this running attack they have, and Coach Shooter, this is a team that they've jumped up to 20 in the power rankings. Again, it's going to depend on the draw, but that's an offense that can go score. And if a defense can get enough stops, they have a chance to win a game or two.
No, it's an exciting one. And look, moving to the Slidell game, Slidell goes to North Shore and kind of handles business there. I mean, that game's not close. Now, I did hear that Ramon Williams for North Shore did not play in that game, so that's a huge blow for Coach Sanders and that crew. He's been one of the best running backs in the area, this season. The biggest thing to me in that game, and the reason why I really like Slidell, is defensively they've gotten older throughout the season. They're starting to play better. But Jaquan Jones, their running back, he runs for, I don't know, 230 last night on 20 carries, something like that. He can run it with the best of them. He's probably one of the best receivers they have on the backfield. Carlos Flemings had a good game last night at wide receiver. Stanley Lang did start that game at quarterback, and then Ricky Williams came in late. Everybody knows that Ricky was kind of at the top of the standings all season until the last couple of weeks he didn't play. But Ricky comes in late and he goes 6 for 6 for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, that's a Slidell offense that can really score it. Same thing. If they can make some stops, playoff football, Cass, we'll laugh about this, but, I've always said that playoff football, you have to be able to run the ball and you have to be able to play defense. But I think over the years, it's turned into sometimes you just have to outscore the other guy. Right. Yeah. And what I like about these teams is they've got the ability to go score when they need to.
No, I think that's absolutely right. Like, you have to get stops at important points in a game, but it has turned into, let's try to go see if we can outscore them. And maybe Slidell being without their starting quarterback, Ricky Williams, the last 2 weeks, that might prove to be a good thing. They may have found something with playing both quarterbacks. I mean, that's an impressive number. Obviously, you have the running game with Jaquan, but if they can score, I mean, they're putting up 42 on North Shore. That, again, it's another team that's going to be a low seed. I think right now they're at 22. That's a scary draw in the first round for someone to have to go play.
I wouldn't want to do it.
No, especially what I mean, you got to prepare for 2 quarterbacks. You got to prepare for a running game that's going to come right at you. Like, that's a tough ask.
Oh yeah.
Had a comment in from Slidell. Ramon actually did play last night, just didn't get a lot of snaps. So was a reduced factor there, but a good win for Slidell. Looking at 4A, and I was actually got to talk with Luke Delafield a bit over the week about this bracket and some of the teams in there. Coming from the North Shore area, at this point, everybody has got their eye out for Lakeshore and Franklinton in this bracket. But Titans had a really good matchup against Hahnville in Week 10. But non-select Division II, really some of the best playoff football that you see with some of those talented 4A schools.
Yeah, no doubt. We've pumped up this district for quite a while. I met with Coach Salt, in the summer, and all he could talk about was how talented it is, and you kind of see that. First and foremost, every team in the district's in the playoffs, right? So that's a big one. Cass,
on the non-select side, I think we're going to be the last team out.
Oh, do you think so?
I think so.
Oh, gosh. So. I did my public school math might have got me, but
no, that's all good. No, it's going to be very, very close, but I think we're going to end up being the last team out.
Okay, well, look, let's give Hannon and Coach Soper some credit. I'll say this, and Coach Soper said it a couple weeks ago on our show. He said he goes home, his wife's the sounding board, and her question is always, is it better, right? And I'll say this, they've been a really good football team all year. Mm-hmm. They've played well. They've done what they need to do basically in the first half, which kind of to me points a little bit to numbers, right? And some depth and what you can do there. But they once again, they play Franklinton really close the first half. Franklinton they've got some guys, man. They play really well. I have to give Hunter Lay some credit last night. for Hannon. He has 14 catches for 152 yards. Braden Sprang had a good game, defensively. And I'll say this, we'll have some stuff in the offseason, but Hannon's got virtually everybody
Everybody's back.
in the playmaking ability. They'll lose Grayson Dupree, which would be huge, but they've got a lot of guys back. Franklinton, to me, is one of the most intriguing teams in the playoffs. And the reason I say that is I think they have what it takes to get there because they can play offense. They're always going to improve on defense, and they're physical. They've given up some yards this year. But with Jacob Crane at quarterback, they've got 2 wide receivers that I think are 2 of the best in the state. They've started to run the ball a little bit better, and they know what it looks like. They know what it feels like, and I think that's so valuable for a team like that.
Absolutely. And I was going to say just that with Franklinton, what the ceiling is. With all those guys, especially Jacob Crane and obviously Coach Salt being at the helm after that Superdome run last year, that starts to show itself in the playoffs, I think, around round 3. When you get to Thanksgiving and you obviously you're off of school, the games obviously become more important each time you win, but that experience can really show itself the deeper you get into the playoffs. And this is a Franklinton team that if they can get to that round 3, that experience, and then obviously the playmaking ability they have and the explosiveness they have on offense can really shine through. But they can win games just because they have a coach that's been there before, they have a quarterback that's been there before, and they know what it looks like. And it's kind of similar for Lakeshore as a team. They, it's new guys. It's the same staff that was there last year. They run into Franklinton. They lose a game in overtime in round 3. It wouldn't be surprising if these 2 teams, and I think right now they're on the same side of the bracket, if these 2 teams meet again in the semifinals. Like that would be like a great theater. But this district it's deep. There's no easy outs. I'm a pump up Coach Soper again. Like the job that he has done with that program is been unbelievable. And look, we had chances early in the year to win 2 games against Catholic Point Coupee and Covenant Christian that we lose by 1 in overtime, 1 by a point. If you win one of those 2, you're in the playoffs. You win both, you're looking at something higher. But the fact that we were in that position speaks to the job that he has done. And there's a lot of guys that are coming back for this Hannon team too. So the future is definitely bright. But this district is tough.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. We have to give some credit to Coach Powell at Laranja. His first year as a head coach, they're in the dance, and you can't dance unless you're on the dance floor, and they're in. So credit.
They're going to be the last team. They're the 24 seed as it stands now. So they'll travel. Yeah. They'll travel to St. Michael's, and look, if they can get Ryland James healthy and that running game can get going,
they're different.
They're
different with Ryland. I mean, he makes he reminds me a lot of Mandeville last year with their running back. He can make up for a lot of things. And then Pearl River, another good game. Thursday night they get the win. And Pearl River's an intriguing one because they can run the ball. They're physical as heck, and they've got a coach that can really coach it. He knows what it looks like too.
He knows what he's doing.
Lastly, on Lakeshore, I'll say this: Coach Indes is one of the best around. He's continued to prove it year in and year out. I think he was probably a little disappointed. They were at the number 2 seed, and they needed some things to go well. But, they play a very good Hahnville team to a 28-21 loss, and that's a really close game. I mean, I'm enamored with Coach Indes in that group because of what they do and how they do it. I just think they're primed to go make a run because of who they are and how they're coached.
Yeah, I agree, and I think in particular, like they get one of the best playoff type games in week 10. They wrap up the district in week 9, but that's a 1 possession loss to Hahnville, but take that loss in week 10 and then don't lose another one. So that's a great way for them to spend that week. Let's look at 8-3A and Jewel Sumner with the undefeated season. They got to be that's I'm sure that's where we got to start with those guys.
Look, super proud of Coach Career in that group. They are now 20-2 in the last 2 seasons, right, at Jewel Sumner. So very, very impressive. He's a legacy guy. His family's coached around that area for a long time. They have some extremely talented kids that not a lot of people know about. Jamon Dyson, a running back, he plays like slot wing back in that wing T offense. He can run it. Like he's a big time player. Their quarterback can throw it. They did that last night. They get out to a 14-0 lead. Look, Drew Palmer for A-Meat. He's a good quarterback. Sumner makes a great play last night on a fumble forced of his that they get some yardage on and score on. It's a 21-7 game, but it's 14-7. Ameet's got talent. I mean, Ameet, they're very well coached. Jabyron Dillon, great running back. They got Franklin Morgan Jr., who's a Louisiana Tech commit, who can take it to the house on special teams and defense. I'm excited for both these guys, but have to give a special shout out to Coach Career and Jules Sumner on an undefeated regular season, and that top 3 seed that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I think we've said this the last couple of times we've been together, Mike, but I think it's time to stop saying that they're the most overlooked 20-2 team over the last 2 years. Like, to start looking at it. That's so impressive what they've done, and to do it. It felt like, and they beat Ameet last year, but it felt like for them to get to 10-0, like, it always felt right for them to go to Ameet and win the game. Like, that's what they had to do. But this is another team. I kind of look at them similar to how I see Lakeshore, with the offense that they run and how physical they are. This is a team as a 3 seed that can really go deep into the playoffs, because that running attack with Dyson, like, they can put up points. This is a team that really can play deep, that honestly, I don't know how many people have even noticed. But it's time to start taking notice of this Jules Sumner team. And on the other side, Ameet knows how to win. They know how to win in November. They're so talented. They're always talented. So they can play deep as well. But this was extremely impressive for Jules Sumner, not just to win the game, but to hold Ameet to 7 points.
Yeah, and look, I was going to say, I'll got to credit North Shore Prep Report here for the coverage of Sumner, because Cass, you mentioned them being overlooked. Well, North Shore Prep Report made us all look. So, and we've liked what we've seen from the Cowboys.
Well, look, I think Pine's an interesting one as well. Very, very experienced team, very experienced coach. They got a senior quarterback. They run the same type offense. Christian Williams, their running back linebacker is very good. Caden Stogner, linebacker. They've got some skilled players, and they've got some talent, and they're that 8-3A type team, man. They'll punch you in the mouth and play hard. So, I look forward to those guys in the playoffs making a little noise as well.
All right, let's peek at District 9 2A, finish up with the North Shore here. North Lake Christian, they bounced back in Week 10 with a big win. St. Helena gets another win to finish off the season. And then St. Thomas Aquinas finishes off their regular season with a loss at Prairie View.
Well, look, first and foremost, St. Helena, 4-0 in district champs. Kudos to those guys. That young man, his last name is Baker, their quarterback, phenomenal young kid. He's a sophomore. Watch out for him. He's 6'3", 165 pounds. He can run it and sling it. He's actually second in the area in passing stats, so we'll see that this week. We'll have him updated and get him in there. But they have a huge win at Pope John Paul, and I'll be honest with you, I thought that was there for the taking for Pope because of how they run and what they do. But St. Helena, they got some confidence last week against North Lake Christian, and they go into Pope and handle business. I have to say this, thanks for Coach Brian Babin over at Pope for keeping me updated after our game. But he said they had at least 50 penalties and 35 stoppages for cramps. So it was a very, very humid Week 10 on the North Shore. And then look, moving to the Independence North Lake Christian game, North Lake Christian, obviously I know a lot about them, but they're an intriguing one because when they do what they do well, they're very talented, and they've got skill players that can match up with anybody. If the offensive line plays well and they can run the ball, that's who they are. Big nights last night for Cam Casnave. He's over 5,000 yards on his career, which he's had a phenomenal career at North Lake Christian. Jordan Willis had 4 touchdowns in the first half, 2 rushing and 2 receiving. Sam Grant, quarterback, played well. Max Millett, great baseball player. He's actually committed to Nunez. He had 2 interceptions. He returned 1 for a touchdown, but that was a great game for them. And Coach Messina, he'll have Independence back on track. So, you'll see that. And then for Coach Nunez over at St. Thomas Aquinas, rough year 1. And I'm not going to say you saw it coming, but you kind of understand it, right? But, he's going to turn the page and he'll get that program back on track.
Yeah, and I think just picking up on that last point with St. Thomas Aquinas, I think the biggest victory for STA this year was the fact that there seems to be some stability there now with Coach Nunez, and there's guys out there. I think they had upwards of almost 55 players on the team. So that program's trending in the right direction. St. Helena, they're always talented. They've always had talent. That program's kind of gone through spurts where they'll have 2 or 3 really good years, then they kind of come back down. This may be one of those years that they're on the upswing. And when we talked about this game, Mike, we said if it was gonna turn into somewhat of a shootout, St. Helena was going to be the team that won. Pope John Paul wanted to keep this game probably in the teens and limit possessions, and St. Helena was just too much offensively. Northlake Christian, and obviously you know a lot about them. I've seen them up close and personal in this Division III select bracket, which is so balanced and so deep. Marshall, I know you talked about it before we hopped on about this bracket specifically. Always one of the more competitive ones. Northlake just lurking down there at the 11 seed right now. They're going to give somebody problems because they're big, they're physical, they can run it right at you. They're athletic enough to make some things happen. So interesting if they could put it all together. They can make a run here. Obviously, it's going to depend on matchups in that bracket. But, man, just looking at this Division III select bracket, it's deep. It's tough.
Yeah, and again, I've coached in that bracket for several years, and you just always see programs every round of that playoff bracket. North Shore Prep Report, Mike McMillan, Cass Hargis. Cass also does the Talking Ball Y'all show, but if you're watching this show, you definitely watch that show, and you should, Sunday nights and Tuesday nights. Also, Cass and Mike will be previewing everything on the North Shore from here on out through football season. And if you're not into football, doesn't matter what sport on the North Shore, stick with those guys, volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball, whatever. They're going to keep you caught up on that. Cass and Mike, man, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. And again, I'll be bothering y'all all week long like I always do.
Bring it on, dude. This was awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Marshall, appreciate
guys.
everything you do. Look, before I jump off, got to give credit to Coach Scott and my Destrehan Wildcats, man. District championship last night. Looks like they've gotten a pretty good seed now, and that tough schedule they played early is going to pay off for them. They're playing really well right now. So
I think Dabney just ran for another touchdown.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get those power ratings updated with that. Then. Appreciate it.
That's right. And then look, I do have to give St. Aug credit. They went into John Curtis and kind of did their thing.
Yeah.
So that's a very good John Curtis football team. I wouldn't be surprised to see that matchup later in the playoffs too.
Nope, same here.
All right. Mike McMillan, Cass Hargis, North Shore Prep Report. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.